Hey guys, tonight we dive into the secret mental switch that flips your English learning from a slog to a sprint. Imagine you're trudging through a dense forest, thick, tangled, exhausting. Now imagine suddenly you find a hidden path that cuts straight through, making the journey faster, easier, even enjoyable. That path, it's your mindset. And here's the reality check. You probably won't survive this journey if you don't get your head in the game first. Because learning English fast isn't just about textbooks or apps. It's about rewiring how you think about learning itself. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, shout out your location and local time in the comments. Let's see who's tuning in from the middle of the night or mid-afternoon hustle. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your brain is wired for patterns, stories, and rewards. Fast English learning begins by shifting from I have to learn to I get to learn. It sounds cheesy, but the science backs it. When you frame learning as an exciting challenge instead of a boring chore, your brain releases dopamine, your brain's little cheerleader, making everything stick better. History shows that the fastest language learners often share one trait. They view mistakes as clues, not failures. Like how in ancient Rome, gladiators trained relentlessly but didn't fear falling. Each fall was a lesson. But here's a quirky twist. Did you know some early English learners in the 19th century tried using crocodile dung sunscreen to protect their skin while practicing English outdoors? No, that's not a metaphor, just a wild attempt to mix culture and language practice. Historians still argue whether such eccentric methods genuinely boosted learning or just distracted learners. So, you're not just flipping a switch, you're planting a seed of curiosity and resilience. That mindset shift is your fastest pass through the English jungle. Ready? Let's keep moving. You're already on the path, and now it's time to train your ears, the gateway to fluency. Immersive listening is more than just passive hearing. It's a secret weapon many miss. Imagine tuning into English conversations like a detective catching whispers in a bustling cafe, or a night owl absorbing late-night podcasts while the world sleeps. Your ears can pick up so much more than you think, especially when you're in the middle of noisy, chaotic places. Think about London in the 1800s, a city alive with street vendors shouting, horses clattering, and children playing. Immigrant learners there had no fancy apps, just the cacophony of daily life. Yet many picked up English fast by tuning into these everyday sounds. It wasn't easy, but their brains adapted to filter out the noise and latch onto meaningful patterns. Modern science agrees. The brain's auditory cortex gets stronger with exposure to diverse sounds, even if you don't consciously focus. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some language learners swear by shadow listening, where you listen to English at double speed. Sounds crazy, right? But it forces your brain to work harder, tuning into the gist instead of every word. Historians still argue whether fast listening is better than slow, deliberate practice, but one thing's clear, you need both. So how do you hack immersive listening? Start by blending English into your daily life without pressure. Play English songs during chores. Watch shows with subtitles off sometimes, or tune into English radio while walking. Your brain loves repetition, so even if you catch just a phrase here and there, it's progress. And hey, Don't stress if you don't understand everything. That's normal. Remember that crooked dung sunscreen? The learners didn't get it all right either, but they kept going. Your ears will adapt if you let them wander through the wild jungle of sounds daily. Next up, we'll build your mental vault of words without the overwhelm. You're cruising along now, ears sharpened and mindset switched on. And here comes the treasure hunt, building your mental vocabulary vault. Words aren't just random blobs of sound, they're keys, unlocking doors to new ideas, jokes, emotions, and even your favorite memes. But here's the catch. Vocabulary learning can quickly become a swamp of overwhelm. You find yourself drowning in lists, flashcards, and endless new words, wondering if you'll ever escape. Fast learners have a secret. They don't chase every word. Instead, they collect what's useful and memorable, the words that make their own little English world richer. Picture a medieval librarian carefully selecting scrolls, ignoring the dusty ones, and focusing on gems that light up the room. Vocabulary is no different. Quality beats quantity. Here's a quirky tip. Try linking new words to funny images or personal stories. For example, imagine the word serendipity, as a squirrel accidentally finding a treasure chest of acorns. Your brain loves stories and visuals because they tap into your emotions, making recall lightning fast. Historians still argue whether rote memorization or storytelling is more effective, but science leans toward the emotional connection. Don't stress about mastering every word at once. Use spaced repetition apps sparingly and focus on words you encounter often in your listening and reading. Those are your high-value gems. Also, remember slang and idioms. They spice up your English and make it feel alive. By the way, some early English learners in colonial times tried memorizing entire poems just to expand their vocab. Odd but effective? Maybe. Your job is simpler. Pick words that matter to your world. So, as you wander this linguistic forest, keep your treasure map handy. Focus on words that open the most doors for you. Up next, the grammar shortcuts that will save your sanity and keep your English sounding natural. You've got your mindset locked, ears primed, and vocabulary vault growing. Now let's tackle the notorious beast, grammar. The good news? You don't have to become a walking grammar textbook. There are cheat codes hiding in plain sight that no one talks about, but make all the difference in sounding natural. Think of grammar like the rules of a game. Knowing every tiny rule isn't necessary to win, but knowing the big ones is essential. In 18th century England, language learners often stumbled over complicated grammar drills, but excelled by focusing on sentence patterns used in daily conversation. Their success came from knowing which rules actually matter, not memorizing every single exception. Here's a quirky fact. Some language teachers once recommended learning English by memorizing entire Shakespearean monologues. Poetic, yes, but confusing for learners. Historians still argue whether this approach helped or hindered fluency, but it's safe to say it wasn't for the faint-hearted. The real grammar hack? Focus on verb tenses that show time clearly, present, past, future, and master simple sentence structures. Once you can build a clear sentence, you've won half the battle. Avoid obsessing over tiny prepositions or weird exceptions at first. Those will come naturally as you read and listen more. Also, embrace chunks or phrases. How are you? I don't know, which native speakers use without thinking. These ready-made building blocks speed up your speaking and writing, making you sound less robotic. Remember, perfect grammar isn't the goal. Clear, confident communication is. When you trip up, it's okay. Even Shakespeare had his quirks. So, relax into grammar's rhythm without drowning in rules. Next, we'll silence that inner critic and turn whispers into roars. You've learned the basics, but there's a shadow lurking, your inner critic. That voice whispering, "Don't speak, you'll mess up," or "Your accent sounds weird." To speak English fast, you need to turn those whispers into roars of confidence. Imagine standing on a stage with a microphone, but instead of trembling, you own every word with calm certainty. Historically, many immigrants struggled with this silent battle. In the bustling streets of New York City in the early 1900s, immigrants often hesitated to speak English for fear of judgment. But those who pushed through awkward moments, stumbles, and laughter became fluent faster. It's like a muscle that grows stronger with use, not perfection. Here's a quirky thought. Some language learners used to talk to their pets in English, practicing conversations with zero judgment. Historians still argue whether talking to pets genuinely boosts fluency. But hey, it's low pressure and hilarious. Plus, your dog is a great audience. The secret is simple. Embrace mistakes as badges of progress. Silence your inner critic by focusing on communication, not perfection. Start small. Practice saying phrases aloud when you're alone, or record yourself. Over time, you'll notice your confidence swelling, your voice steadier. Also, find safe spaces to practice. Language cafes, online groups, or with patient friends. The more you speak, the less fear you'll feel, and the more mistakes, the faster you learn. So, the next time you hesitate, remind yourself, every fluent speaker was once a mumbling beginner. Now, let's sharpen your reading skills to keep this momentum going. You're growing more confident in speech, so let's sharpen your reading skills. Think of it like becoming a detective, cracking codes with ease. Reading English quickly isn't about plowing through every word. It's about scanning for clues and grasping the bigger picture. Imagine flipping through a novel or article like a sleuth searching for vital evidence, catching important details without getting stuck. Back in Victorian England, the rise of newspapers made quick reading an essential skill. Readers skimmed dense text to stay informed, relying on context rather than dictionary lookups. This practical habit helped many immigrants keep pace with rapid social changes. Historians still argue whether speed reading sacrifices comprehension, but a balanced approach wins the day. Here's a quirky fact. Some speed readers claim they can read entire pages while their eyes dance over the text like lightning bugs on a summer night. While that might sound magical, the real trick is training your eyes to recognize groups of words and anticipate what's coming next. To practice, start with familiar topics, your favorite hobbies, news in English, or simple novels. Don't sweat unknown words. Guess from context and keep moving. Also, try reading aloud sometimes. It doubles as speaking practice and helps internalize rhythms. And remember, like the crooked dung sunscreen learners who braved odd methods, don't be afraid to try unconventional reading tactics. Speed, comprehension, and enjoyment can coexist if you let your brain play detective. Next, we'll slide into writing tips that turn your sentences from clunky to smooth. Now that your reading muscles are flexing, let's glide into writing. transforming your English from clunky, hesitant sentences into smooth, flowing prose. Writing doesn't have to be a chore. In fact, it can feel more like a creative playdate with words when you know the right tricks. Back in the 1920s, writers like Ernest Hemingway revolutionized prose with simple, direct sentences that packed emotional punches. Immigrant learners who embraced clear, straightforward writing found their voices faster than those tangled in complex grammar puzzles. Historians still argue whether elaborate writing impresses or just confuses, but clarity usually wins hearts. Here's a quirky tip. Try free writing. Set a timer for 5 minutes and just write whatever pops into your head. No editing allowed. It's messy, yes, but it loosens up your brain and breaks the perfectionism trap. Some famous authors swore by this technique to overcome writer's block. Another hack is to imitate phrases from books, articles, or podcasts you enjoy. Copying doesn't mean cheating. It means internalizing natural expressions that will soon become your own. Don't worry about spelling or grammar mistakes on your first draft. Think of writing as sculpting. The first shape is rough, and you polish it later. Journaling daily or blogging about your day in English can turn writing into a fun habit. Remember that quirky 19th century learner memorizing poems? Your process is less about memorization and more about expression. Soon we'll unravel accent myths and learn to sound like yourself, only clearer. You're finding your writing groove, but what about how you sound? Accent reduction is a topic loaded with myths and wishes. The truth? You don't need to erase your accent to be understood. You need clarity and confidence. Imagine your accent as a unique flavor in the world's English stew. Valuable, not a flaw to fix. Back in the early 20th century, immigrants to the U.S. faced pressure to sound American, often erasing their rich linguistic backgrounds. Yet many retained accents while thriving professionally and socially. Historians still argue whether accent neutrality improves communication or unnecessarily pressures learners. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some language coaches have learners mimic cartoon characters to loosen their tongues and play with sounds. Imagine sounding like Bugs Bunny to get vowels just right. Fun, right? The key to accent clarity lies in mastering stress, rhythm, and intonation more than perfect pronunciation. Practicing sentence melody helps you sound natural and easier to understand, even if your vowels have an exotic twist. Don't get hung up on fixing your accent. Instead, aim for clear, confident speech that lets your personality shine through. Remember, many native speakers have regional accents just as thick as yours. Soon, we'll dive into how cultural clues speed your English learning journey, your accents shining through. And now, it's time to tap into the cultural clues that speed up learning. Language isn't just words and grammar. It's a living, breathing reflection of culture, history, and daily life. Imagine walking into a room where everyone's wearing invisible costumes, telling stories about their past. When you understand those costumes, those cultural clues, English starts to feel less like a puzzle and more like a warm conversation. In the 1960s, cultural immersion programs exploded in popularity, showing how deep understanding of traditions, idioms, and social norms dramatically boosted language skills. Historians still argue whether cultural knowledge or linguistic drills carry more weight, but it's clear culture enriches language learning. Here's a quirky fact. English has borrowed so many words from other languages that sometimes the same word carries different cultural meanings, like tea can mean a drink or a juicy gossip session. Confusing? Absolutely. Engage with English through movies, music, and traditions. Celebrate holidays like Halloween or watch shows that explain everyday customs. These experiences plant vocabulary and phrases firmly in your brain. Remember those eccentric early learners trying crocodile dung sunscreen? They were mixing cultural immersion with language learning in their own bizarre way. As you embrace culture, English becomes a vibrant tapestry, not just a list of rules. Up next, the tech tools that can supercharge or sabotage your journey. You're soaking up culture, and now it's time to talk tech. The good, the bad, and the underrated tools that speed up your English journey. Technology is like a double-edged sword. It can either propel you forward or trap you in endless scrolling and distractions. Back in the late 1990s, language learning software like Rosetta Stone revolutionized how people approached English, providing immersive environments long before smartphones existed. Historians still argue whether software or face-to-face practice is more effective, but the best learners often combine both. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some language learners swear by dictation apps that convert your speech to text, revealing your pronunciation flaws in real time. Others use AI chatbots to simulate conversations without the fear of judgment, a digital pet to practice talking with. But beware of shiny apps promising fluency overnight. Many are just elaborate flashcard machines that burn you out. The secret is finding tools that fit your style and keep you engaged without overwhelming. Try mixing podcasts, language exchange platforms, and note-taking apps to create a personalized toolkit. Remember, your phone is a powerful ally when used wisely, not a procrastination device. And just like the ancient learners experimenting with wild methods, don't be afraid to test different tech until you find your perfect match. Next, we'll unlock memory tricks that tap into your brain's natural wiring. You're cruising with your tech tools, so now let's dive into memory tricks that harness your brain's natural wiring. Learning English isn't about brute force. It's about working with your brain's quirky habits, like a dance partner who knows all the moves. Imagine your brain as a garden, planting seeds of new words and phrases that blossom over time if you nurture them right. In the 1950s, memory champions dazzled the world with mind palaces and mnemonic devices, showing how creative tricks can make seemingly impossible feats manageable. Historians still argue whether these techniques work equally well for everyone, but there's no denying their power. Here's a quirky tip. Try associating words with vivid, bizarre images, like imagining the word peculiar as a purple elephant wearing sunglasses. The stranger the image, the easier your brain recalls it. Visualization makes learning feel like storytelling. Spaced repetition is another powerful hack. Reviewing words at increasing intervals taps into how your brain prioritizes important info. Apps use this method, but you can DIY by revisiting vocab on your own schedule. Also, link new words to existing knowledge. If you love cooking, think of food-related words in English. Your brain loves connections. Remember those old learners memorizing poems? You're doing something similar, but with a modern twist, making the process playful and personalized. Next, we'll tap into social learning power without the usual pressure. You're riding high with memory hacks, and now it's time to unlock the power of social learning, but without the stress and awkwardness that often come with group settings. Imagine learning English as if you're at a casual coffee hangout where conversation flows naturally, mistakes are laughed off, and everyone's rooting for each other. Since the mid-20th century, social clubs and language cafes have been secret hotspots for language learners, turning practice into play. Historians still argue whether formal classes or informal social groups yield better fluency, but there's no doubt that people learn faster when they feel connected. Here's a quirky fact. Some learners create language buddies with pets, plants, or even stuffed animals, anything to reduce the pressure of real human interaction while building speaking habits. It's low stakes and surprisingly effective. If in-person groups aren't an option, online communities, apps, and forums offer a similar vibe. Spaces where you can chat, share mistakes, and pick up slang in a safe zone. The key is consistency and kindness to yourself. Also remember that everyone's journey is unique. You might thrive in big groups or prefer one-on-one chats. Experiment and find your social sweet spot. Keep in mind, early English learners sometimes formed practice gangs in neighborhoods, sharing jokes and stories that made learning less lonely and way more fun. So, dip your toes into social learning without fear. There's a whole world of friendly faces waiting